Is Marvel cooked, or are they cooking? Hey guys, Caleb here from CDBS Studios, and I know this video is a little late. I went on vacation, and then I got bogged down on other projects, so I wasn't able to get this video out when I wanted to, but here it is now. And if you are unaware, Marvel Studios has spent the last couple of weeks releasing two brand new entries in the MCU. Kind of. The first entry was the newest animated TV show, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. The second was their first movie of the year, Captain America Brave New World. So I decided instead of making two completely separate videos, I'm going to make one video where I give my spoiler review on both of these projects to give you some of my thoughts on them. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to answer the question I just posed in the intro. Is Marvel cooked, or are they cooking? If you want to take on the challenge and give your reviews about these two projects, put those in the comment section down below because I'm really interested to see what you all thought about these projects. Without further ado, let's move in to my thoughts. We're going to start this video off by talking about the animated series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And to start off, I do kind of have to establish my expectations going into this series, as this show has had a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that kind of made me skeptical, because originally when this show got pitched, it was called Spider-Man Freshman Year, and it was supposed to be the origin story of Tom Holland's Peter Parker, kind of taking us through his story from him getting bitten by the spider to us first meeting him in Civil War. And then somewhere along the way, the title changed to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and we started to get to see some of the promo for the show, and the stuff that we were seeing made this show look like it was no longer MCU canon, because it just didn't look like it was. And then it finally came out and revealed that this is not MCU canon, it's a separate universe with a completely different Spider-Man. So, I went into this show a little skeptical because I realized, oh, they're doing the Peter Parker origin story again, but instead of now it being Tom Holland's version of the character, it's now a completely different character, which already, I didn't like the fact of getting Tom Holland's origin, because one of the few things I liked about the Home trilogy was that it kind of was Peter's origin, but we skipped over the stuff we didn't need, like we didn't need the Spider or Uncle Ben. So I was a little skeptical about that. And then also going into this new show, there were a couple of things I knew we were going in, like we were getting Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn again, which I was kind of skeptical about that, and then a couple things here and there. So I went into this show with very mixed feelings. And I'm honestly happy to say I enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting. Some of the things that I also thought were skeptical going in is I wasn't totally opposed to the animation as everybody else was. There were a few times it looked a little stiff. I mentioned some of my issues with the characters, and there were a couple things here and there. But even though I was skeptical going in, the show really hooked me, and it got really good. I mean, obviously, we all know the story of Spider-Man. He gets bit by the radioactive spider, Uncle Ben dies, and Peter begins to be a superhero and all these other things. But there were some things they changed about the formula that I actually really liked. The first of those things is that we get to skip over Uncle Ben. In this reality, Uncle Ben already died off screen, so we don't have to go through that again. And the spider bite is honestly really, really minimal because he's bitten in the first episode, but he gets bitten, but then we skip ahead to when he's already been Spider-Man for a little while. So we get to skip over him recklessly trying out different gadgets and trying different suits and that. It's just, we jump into where he's already been Spider-Man for a little while, which is always nice to see. So that really was nice, and I think the show also hooked me really good. I really liked the change they made for the side characters in this show. As, of course, we all know Spider-Man's usual side characters. You got Harry Osborn's usually the best friend. MJ is the love interest. You occasionally could throw in some other characters like Gwen Stacy, Ned Leeds, and all the other smaller characters, even Flash Thompson. But this show switches that, and we get Nico Minoru as the best friend. We get Harry Osborn as kind of another best friend, but he's almost more of a mentor figure in the show, which I actually really like that angle they took for him. And then we have Lonnie Lincoln, who kind of takes the Flash part, but also kind of not, which I really enjoyed. And I'm going to get to Lonnie in a second. And then you got Pearl, who is the new love interest. And I'm kind of hesitant to say this. I actually liked this group of side characters more than the MCU side characters. This is not dogging on the MCU home trilogy at all, but in the trilogy, they very much underutilized in certain aspects MJ and Ned. And to be honest, in this show, Nico, Harry Osborn, and Lottie are instantly more like interesting characters than those two ever were, which I think might be kind of weird to say, but I liked their stories in the show better than that. And moving into the story itself, the story kind of follows that traditional Spider-Man story you all like to know, is that Spider-Man gets his powers, he starts to become Spider-Man, and the show is kind of him coming into his own as a superhero as he turns into Spider-Man. We get to see him slowly learn all the aspects of his powers, slowly start to get better. But the thing I liked about the show is it kind of throws Peter into this new lens of being mentored by Norman Osborn. As Norman Osborn finds out Peter's identity pretty early on in the show. I think it's like episode 3 maybe. And from that point on, Norman Osborn takes on this mentorship role of Peter Parker as he designs his tech, designs his suit, is his guy in the chair for those first couple episodes, which is really fun as you get to see Norman Osborn in this new kind of light where he's kind of mentoring Peter. But obviously, it's Norman Osborn, so you know something shady's going on. And that's really fun as you slowly get to see aspects of the character where it feels like his suits are actively harming Peter in certain ways. You see how he kind of abandons Peter at certain times, either because he's more hesitant on being better than him and like finding Doc Ock and almost gets Peter killed. And a couple of moments here and there where it feels like he's trying to change Peter's entire Spider-Man persona just because it's more marketable to the wider generation. So there's a lot to enjoy about this version of Norman Osborn. And honestly, I would not be upset if he eventually becomes the Green Goblin. In fact, that's kind of the way they set up that character going. And then the show's story also heavily revolves around some other characters. You get Scorpion as kind of our main villain, who is really fun as you get to have some great lives from him. And this show did something really interesting where the first time Spider-Man fights Scorpion, he loses. He almost dies because of Scorpion. And then this starts a multi-episode arc where Peter has PTSD, and when he meets Scorpion again in the finale, he's like scared of him, and he's having these like traumatic moments, which is so good storytelling. It slowly shows how Peter is still just a kid, and he's scared when he almost went through a life-death experience, which is kind of hard. And then there's obviously my favorite aspect of the story this season, Lottie Lincoln. OMG, he is probably my favorite Spider-Man character in this whole show, as the show does this really interesting thing with Lottie, as he starts out as that typical character you see in TV where he's the jock, he's the head of the football team. So going into the show, and he gets Pearl, he gets the girl Peter's after in the first episode. So my brain instantly went, oh, he's just the Flash Thompson for this series. But no, the show flips that first when he becomes one of Peter's best friends. And so that's really interesting. We get Lottie as a best friend. And slowly throughout the show, they kind of show Lottie's life slowly start to fall apart as his brother gets involved with a gang. So Lottie has to take his place in order to save his life. He slowly gets more and more involved in the gang as they fight the Scorpions, which is really fun. And it slowly builds up to that fact of in the finale episode, Lottie gets his powers that turn him into Tombstone, and he takes over the gang. And that is such an interesting story, how they took a character that you have expectations for going in, and they end up flipping his story like 5 times, and it starts as a jock character, then it's a Peter best friend character, then it's this brother, and then it's this character who has his life fall apart, and then it becomes Tombstone. So that's really interesting because, especially for people that don't really truly know, oh, Lottie Lincoln is Tombstone, that's kind of interesting for them to see, especially when they first throw out the Tombstone name pretty early on. That's really good. And Lottie instantly is the best part of this series, to be honest. Looking at some of the other side aspects, there are a few things I did dislike. To be honest, the first couple episodes I was not big on. In fact, I think I mentioned this in my reviews I did in my shorts, that the first couple episodes were okay, but they didn't really hook me on the show. It was the classic, we get to see the origin story and the small little pieces of Peter slowly filling out his life, which we slowly got to see. So that was all in there, which I was not big on, but the show slowly gets better, thankfully. Like I said, I was not totally opposed to the animation. There's a couple times where certain models look a little stiff, but that could be overshadowed. And also, the finale has a really weird plot where it wants to do this like full circle moment where Doctor Strange goes back in time in the final episode, and the spider that bites Peter goes through the portal and bites Peter in the past. So it's like this weird full circle moment where, because Peter is Spider-Man, Norman Osborn takes his DNA and makes another spider, and that spider goes into the past to give Peter his powers. So it's this like paradox moment, which I thought was kind of weird, but I was willing to look past it. And there were a few other things here and there. There's a couple of characters that I'm not big on. I don't think Amadeus Cho is that interesting of a character. In fact, pretty much all of the characters that are part of the Osborn internship are really uninteresting characters. In fact, they're only really present for like 1 or 2 episodes, which makes them kind of uninteresting. In fact, because of the fact that the ending of the show wants to set them up as bigger people, which is kind of weird. I think this might be sacrilegious to say, but Daredevil showing up in the show, I liked it, but I kind of wanted more of him. But I get this is not a Daredevil show. This is a Spider-Man show. So I'm kind of okay with it. And there's a couple of minor things here and there that I don't think are the biggest things to bring up. But the other thing that I really do want to establish is that I really enjoy how this Marvel universe in particular feels lived in. Like, obviously the focus of the show is Spider-Man, so obviously Spider-Man related characters are going to be the main focus, but this show has a handle on the fact that other Marvel heroes exist in this world, and they can just show up because that's just how the Marvel comics work. Like, Daredevil can just show up in an episode because he just is also in New York. Iron Man can show up to arrest Doc Ock because he works with General Ross in this universe. The Avengers can show up because they're dealing with the Sokovia Accords at this time. Doctor Strange can show up because he's also operating in New York. I really enjoy that aspect of this show, how it really feels like they created a Marvel universe that feels lived in. It doesn't feel like the MCU can sometimes, where it feels like the only reason why this hero is the only one stopping this bad guy is because they're the focus of the story and they're the face on the poster. And it can sometimes feel like that, especially for certain characters, where it's like certain aspects, like we have like 5, I think right now, MCU heroes that are operating out of New York. So, but when giant aliens start attacking the world, only the Avengers start to deal with it. Or how I noticed something in particular is that the final episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier has Sam stopping a bunch of stopping the Flag Smashers who are committing terrorism. But like, why does Spider-Man not show up? Why does Daredevil not show up? Why does all these characters that are operating out of New York not show up? I mean, you have some of that options. Like, you could make the argument that Daredevil and Spider-Man are dealing with the Spider-Man controversy at that time, so that's why they're not showing up, but it's kind of a lackluster excuse. So that's one thing I really enjoyed about the show, and honestly, it makes me wonder if they're going to have more Marvel heroes show up during season 2. But that's kind of my thoughts on Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It has a lot of things I really, really enjoyed about it. It has a couple issues here and there that I was not super into, but this was definitely a really solid Spider-Man show, and honestly just reaffirmed my ideas that Marvel Studios really does understand the character of Spider-Man, and it honestly makes me super duper excited for season 2 that we're getting next year. And now we're going to move into my thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World. And to start off this segment, I kind of want to also establish what my expectations were going into this movie. And they were mixed, to say the least. There was all the drama behind the scenes of all the reshoots. The budget was reportedly really high, but then it wasn't. There was a couple minor things here and there regarding a couple separate characters. And also, I was one of the groups that was really weirded out by the fact that they were marketing this movie by having Hulk villains rather than Captain America villains, but I was willing to look past that. So I want to establish that I also went into this movie very, very skeptical. But I'm also happy to announce that coming out of it, there's a lot of those expectations that were met and some that weren't. So to kind of start off, I want to talk about some of the things I liked about the movie. One of the things I really do enjoy about this movie is how it feels different from the other Captain America movies. This is very clearly Sam's story, not Steve's, which I do really enjoy. And it kind of sets this movie apart from the Captain America trilogy and really makes me feel like it's not they wrote this story for Steve and they just stuck Sam in it because he's the current Captain America of the MCU. I also really enjoyed the connection they give to all of our characters. The connection between Sam and Isaiah is so strong in this movie. And I mentioned this back when I did my MCU ranking, but Isaiah Bradley is easily the best part of Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I really love to get to see him have a more prominent role in this movie, and his connection with Sam is a lot of fun as they kind of bond over being Captain America. Then you got the relationship with Falcon, who is a lot of fun, and even some of the other side military people that Sam works with throughout the film are also really interesting and fun. And there's a lot to enjoy about that part of the film. Also, I love the fight sequences in this movie. So many of the aerial dogfights in this movie look so good. Like, specifically the sequence around Celestial Island where Sam literally surfs a missile. That is easily probably my favorite sequence in the movie. That was so well done. But I don't think I can avoid it any longer. We're going to move into some of the negative things I have in the film. And the first thing I do want to point out is that this movie very much feels like an Incredible Hulk sequel. As this movie, like, just to put it on paper, this movie is a mystery film about Thunderbolt Ross, where everything is being manipulated by Samuel Stearns, the leader. And if you were keeping track, the two main villains of this movie are from Incredible Hulk. Incredible Hulk, yeah, that film from all the way back in the pre-days of the MCU, like around the same time as Iron Man. That's who our two villains are. And when you also look at the film, Thunderbolt Ross actually has a really big character arc in this movie. And plus, we got Liv Tyler in there as Betty Ross. This movie feels like it was written as an Incredible Hulk sequel, but for some reason they couldn't use Hulk, so Captain America is the lead. And I don't think that's unrealistic to say, because so many people have pointed this out, and there's even moments in this movie, like one thing that did tick me off really weirdly is that we have one point when he finds the pills that Ross has been taking, and he's like, oh, we need to figure out what's in these things. We're gonna call this guy to figure it out. It's like, it's gamma radiation. Why did you not call Bruce? It feels like this movie wants to take that leap in logic. And I know a lot of superhero movies have this problem where it feels like certain other MCU characters aren't responding to what's going on because the fact that we can't pay them to be in the movie, and also that they're not the face on the poster. But the fact that we have two villains in this movie that Hulk has had direct hands in, and the mystery in this movie relates to gamma radiation, you're asking the audience to take a big leap in logic to be like, wait a second, why isn't Sam calling Bruce to figure this out? I mean, what? So that's kind of weird to say. And also, another problem I kind of had with the movie was that I think the marketing screwed the movie over by revealing Red Hulk. If Red Hulk in this movie was basically in almost every trailer, he's on almost every poster. He's like the main focus of every poster, unlike Captain America is. And so going into this movie, the marketing sets up your expectations to feel like, oh, Captain America is gonna face Red Hulk in this movie. And then Red Hulk's only in like 5 minutes of the movie. It's like a 5-minute fight sequence. That's all Red Hulk gets. That just feels like the marketing screwed over the film, because they wanted to market this movie as the fact that, oh, Captain America is going to fight a Hulk, an actual Hulk, which is something everybody wants to see, right? Yes, we want to see that, but when you market the movie that way, it's more or less like you left the leader out for some reason, and Red Hulk is the one you marketed. Honestly, I wish that was flipped in a way. I wish Samuel Stearns, the leader, was the one you marketed, and Red Hulk was relegated to like a small cameo, or like was like referenced not even in the marketing, so that when Red Hulk does show up in the film, it feels earned by the film. The way it's marketed, it just feels like they wanted to market it on Red Hulk, and Red Hulk's not even in it that much. And this also sets up the problem going into the movie that I also noticed, is that it's very clear Captain America can't defeat Red Hulk. That's very clear. If you've ever picked up any comic book ever, that's very clear. Captain America cannot beat Red Hulk. And even though he stands a good chance, because Red Hulk, unlike regular Hulk, his skin can be pierced, he can't beat him. There's just no way around that Captain America can't beat Red Hulk. So you go into the movie expecting a fight, this main villain, Red Hulk, versus Captain America, and you know he can't beat him, so the next best option is Captain America gives a speech to Red Hulk, and then he G-transforms. I knew it was going to happen going into the movie, because, like I said, Captain America can't beat Red Hulk, but the fact that I'm right also makes me kind of mad. Like, ugh. So that honestly kind of hurts at the fact that. And then also there's certain characters that I feel like are just not really interesting. Ruth, I feel like has no business being in this movie because she basically does nothing during the majority of the runtime. She only is there to basically be Ross's quote unquote head of security, even though she only has ever seen with Ross in like one scene. She's there, she's the one who sees the other assassins kill themselves, and then she also is the one that bails Sam and Falcon out of Samuel Stern's base when they get captured. That's literally the only thing she do in this movie. You could realistically give that role to any other person because you could have someone else be the head of security and then just some other military person bail Sam and Joaquin out, and then someone else, like a prison guard or something, could just witness the assassins. Like, Ruth just does nothing in this movie, and I realize there's other reasons why that happened, but it just is so off that I did mention before I do love Isaiah Bradley's movie. I just feel like he got kind of underutilized because after he gets put in the prison, he's not in the rest of the movie, which can see why they had to go that route with the story, but it just hurts because I think I wanted him in more of the movie, and he kind of just gets shafted hard after that, like the first like 30 minutes of the movie, which is not fun. There's also the problem of the reshoots. We obviously knew that the film got reshot because they got delayed and got reshot. Parts of it got reshot, and you can feel it at times. There are portions of this movie, particularly in the middle, where the reshoots are really, really obvious. It's very clear what they changed and where those changes are. And it's very obvious when you watch the film. So it just is really frustrating because I feel like Captain America Brave New World had such potential, and then it kind of lost it. And then the other thing I want to bring up that I have problems with is the post-credit scene. If you've seen the movie and you've seen the post-credit scene involves Sam going to the raft to talk to the leader, and the leader gives him a warning being like, I've seen the calculations, you and all your heroes are going to be fighting to save this world from every other one. So when you watch that sequence, you think, oh, it's teasing Avengers Doomsday. That's pretty obvious. But then the director came out and said that the post-credit scene is not teasing Doomsday, it's teasing the Illuminati existing on the MCU Earth. I'm sorry, what? You're telling me that you are teasing that the Illuminati is going to exist in the MCU when? Because when is that going to happen? The next Captain America movie that's like 7 years away from happening? Like, this is my general problem with the MCU right now, is that it feels like every post-credit scene is teasing something for a project they haven't greenlit, and there's a chance that we will never get that greenlit because the next director might come in for the next movie and be like, oh yeah, I don't want to take my story that way, and then we're going to do something completely different. So many of the Multiverse Saga post-credit scenes feel like that, where they introduce new characters that might never see again because a sequel to that movie might never get greenlit, or it's introducing a concept that's never going to happen. Like, if we would just want to take a little brief back think to the Infinity Saga, most of the post-credit scenes for the Infinity Saga were for the next movie to release, or a movie that was already well into production. Things like Iron Man 2 teased Thor, which was literally the next movie. Things like Captain America the Winter Soldier teased Age of Ultron, which was already in development by the time Winter Soldier was in late production. Right now in the Multiverse Saga, I think there's only been around 4 post-credit scenes in total that have been answered. And the only reason they were answered is because it was Falcon and the Winter, it was WandaVision, which leads into Multiverse of Madness, Black Widow, which leads into Hawkeye, Loki, which leads into Loki Season 2, and Miss Marvel leading into the Marvels. Those are the only ones that have been answered. Everything else has either been set up, and we've never even heard from those characters again. So this post-credit hurts because when I first saw it, my instant thought was, okay, it's teasing Doomsday. That's obvious. But now it's teasing something for another movie that hasn't been greenlit. And the way he phrased in the interview is that they left it vague in the post-credit scene for a reason. It just kind of feels like a loose reason to be like, okay, it could relate to Doomsday if that's the route Marvel wants to take it, but this is what I wanted it to relate to. If it was me, I think there was a much more obvious answer for what the post-credit scenes should be. One of them should have been Sam reassembling the Avengers, because that was one of the main focuses of the movie, and he already picked Falcon, and you could have just even done it simply as he's looking through old files or old phone numbers of his old Avengers colleagues, which also would set up Avengers Doomsday, because another problem right now is that we don't know who the Avengers are. So going into a movie called Avengers Doomsday, who are our main characters going to be? Because we don't know who the Avengers are right now. And then the second post-credit scene could have been something related to Thunderbolts, because Bucky Barnes, one of the leads for Thunderbolts, is in this movie. He shows up in this movie. Do something that shows where he's going next. I mean, it's so obvious that it honestly hurt that they didn't go that route. So yeah, Captain America Brave New World is a very mixed bag when it comes to movie. It has some things that I really enjoy and some things that I don't. So for Captain America Brave New World, I've decided to give the film a 6 out of 10. I really enjoyed the film, and it has a lot of things I love about it, but it also has some really glaring issues that kind of bring it down. So it gets a 6 out of 10, which is, I think, pretty decent. So there's my thoughts on the two recent Marvel MCU projects, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and Captain America Brave New World. But now I want to take a brief second to answer the question I posed at the beginning of this video. Is Marvel cooked, or are they cooking? It is a common criticism nowadays to say that the MCU is not doing that well right now. It has gone into kind of a slump era where a lot of people have left the franchise and it doesn't seem like it's doing very well. And there's also some hardcore defenders. And it's easy to see why. Marvel kind of took a nosedive after Endgame, where it didn't really know where it wanted to take its story, and so as a result, it had a ton of stuff. And also, the introduction of Disney Plus meant that they now had tons of Disney Plus shows, where it also felt like they didn't know what they wanted to be a show and what to be a movie, because I've mentioned before, I think Falcon and Winter Soldier would have worked better as a movie, while Eternals probably would have been better as a TV show. And even some other things, Miss Marvel should have totally been a movie. Moon Knight probably would have worked as a movie, but I don't think I mind it too much as a series. So it's always got this weird sense where it feels like also Marvel kind of feels crowded right now. And these two projects, I told you I have varying degrees. I really enjoyed Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and I loved Captain America Brave New World, but Captain America Brave New World has some issues that bring it down. While Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man has less issues, but it does also have issues. And if we just want to take a brief look back at 2024 real quick, Marvel Studios released 5 projects over the course of last year. Echo, X-Men 97, Deadpool and Wolverine, Agatha All Along, and What If Season 3. Of the projects last year, 3 of them were really, really good. That being X-Men 97, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Agatha All Along. And the two stinkers were Echo and What If Season 3. So that seems like a pretty good rate. As we're going right now, this year has 9 projects in total, and right now we've had 2 of them released. I think one of them is on the good side, the second is on kind of the negative side. So it's kind of like a 50-50 right now. We'll see if that improves as we go down the year. So I think I am going to say that Marvel right now is cooking. Obviously, they have still some of their issues. Captain America Brave New World has its problems, and I'm totally expecting other projects this year to have problems. I mean, that's just generally how movies go. I mean, there's very few movies out there that have 0 problems. And so there's going to be problems I have with these later movies, but it really just depends on how much I enjoy the movie and how much those negative things impact my experience with it. So that's what I think Marvel has right now. And I think from some of the things we've seen about these upcoming projects, they have a chance to be really good. Daredevil Born Again looks like it's going to be an amazing continuation of the Daredevil show. Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts look like they're finally bringing the MCU back to things that we really enjoyed. Marvel Zombies look like it's going to be really good, and also because it was probably one of the better episodes of What If. And then you have X-Men 97, Eyes of Wakanda, and then Wonder Man at the end of the year. Eyes Wakanda is one of those shows that I'm kind of interested in because it's going to be kind of looking at the history of Wakanda, which I don't know why we can't just do that in a Black Panther movie, but whatever. And Wonder Man, the only reason I'm skeptical for it is because we don't know much about the show yet. We had like a 30-second teaser when Disney Plus did like all Marvel things coming out next year. So we know it's happening. We know some of the casting, but we don't know a ton about the show. So that's really the only reason I'm skeptical about it. So I think Marvel is cooking. And obviously this year is also going to start see Doomsday starting to get created. So we're also going to be finally entering that side of the saga. And then maybe once we get out of the multiverse saga, we'll be able to enter proper MCU now that we can use the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, all of the corners of the MCU. So I think the MCU is cooking. They still are totally capable of making really solid pieces of work. And honestly, I might pose this question again in a couple of weeks when Daredevil Born Again airs, which will be probably the true indicator that if Marvel can't get Daredevil right, there might be no hope for the future of the MCU. So I want to thank you guys all very much for watching this video, and I want to know, do you agree with my takes? Do you think Marvel is cooking right now, or are they cooked? And while you're at it, like I said, if you've seen your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and Captain America Brave New World, leave your thoughts on them down in the comment section, and we can get a conversation going. But without further ado, thank you guys all very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys!